I never thought I'd see the company my father built with his blood and sweat fall into chaos so quickly. For decades, he led with respect, with dignity, with a kind of strength that couldn't be bought or faked. People followed him not because of his title, but because they trusted him. But the day he retired, everything shifted. The applause for his farewell speech hadn't even faded when a stranger walked in, a man in a sharp suit, wearing arrogance like a crown. He didn't greet me. He didn't acknowledge the years my family had poured into this place. Instead, he walked straight to my desk, sat down in my chair, and declared with a smirk, "The company is mine now." In that moment, I clenched my fists, ready to fight back, ready to defend my father's legacy. But before I could say a word, his phone rang. He answered with confidence, but as the seconds ticked by, the color drained from his face. His smirk vanished. His hands trembled. And when he finally looked at me, the arrogance was gone, replaced by desperation. "I need your help," he said. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just a fight for a title. It was a battle for the truth, for loyalty, and for my father's legacy. And I was ready for war. My name is Ethan, and I'm 31 years old. For as long as I can remember, my father was the backbone of our company. He built it from nothing but grit, vision, and endless sleepless nights. To the world, he was the CEO. To the employees, he was a mentor. To me, he was proof that integrity could survive in business. The day of his retirement felt heavier than I expected. The office was filled with quiet chatter, bittersweet smiles, and eyes that glistened with respect. My father stood at the center of it all, delivering a farewell speech that wasn't about numbers or profits, but about people. He thanked the staff, calling them family. He reminded everyone that honesty had been the company's greatest strength. I stood off to the side, watching him with a mix of pride and fear. Pride because I knew the depth of his accomplishments. Fear because I didn't know what came next. The team often looked to me for direction, and I could feel their unspoken expectation that I would carry on his legacy. As the applause rose, my father caught my eye and gave me the smallest nod. No words, just a silent passing of the torch. My chest tightened. It was my turn to protect what he had built. But before the clapping even faded, the air in the room shifted. The doors opened, and the new CEO walked in with a swagger that made every conversation die mid-sentence. His smile wasn't warm. It was sharp, almost mocking. In that moment, I felt the ground beneath us start to change. The legacy my father left behind was about to be tested. The man strode across the office floor as though he owned every inch of it. His shoes clicked against the polished tiles, echoing louder than the fading applause for my father. The employees exchanged uncertain glances, their smiles from moments ago fading into tight lines of discomfort. I stepped forward to greet him, ready to at least offer a professional handshake. But he didn't slow down. He didn't even look at me. Instead, he walked straight to my desk, and dropped into the chair as if it had been waiting for him all along. He leaned back, folding his hands across his chest with a smirk that made my blood boil. Then, in a voice loud enough for the entire floor to hear, he announced, "The company is mine now." Gasps rippled through the room. Clara, my most loyal team lead, froze mid-step, her files clutched tightly to her chest. James shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his eyes flicking to me for reassurance. The rest of the staff stared, wide-eyed, at the brazen display. I stood rooted to the spot, my fists tightening at my sides. Every part of me wanted to shout, to throw him out of the seat he had stolen. But I didn't move. Instead, I watched. Because arrogance, I knew, always exposes itself if you give it time. He wasted no effort in proving me right. He barked at Clara, "bring me the last quarter's reports. And make sure they're polished properly, not like the sloppy work you've been doing." Clara's cheeks flushed, but she said nothing. Her eyes darted toward me, searching for direction. I clenched my jaw. He wanted to humiliate, to show dominance, to rewrite the rules of the company my father had built. And as much as it burned me inside, I stayed silent for now. Because sometimes the smartest move isn't to fight immediately. It's to wait. and to watch the fool hang himself with his own rope. The office buzzed uneasily as he continued barking orders. He dismissed years of carefully built systems, tore apart vendor contracts without a second thought, and mocked the people who had carried this company on their backs long before he ever showed his face. I stood there, silent but boiling inside. Every insult he threw at my team felt like a slap against my father's legacy. The employees obeyed, but their hesitation showed. They didn't respect him, they feared him. And fear was a fragile leash. Then it happened. His phone buzzed sharply against the desk. He glanced at the screen and smirked again, clearly enjoying the performance of answering in front of everyone. "Yes, this is the CEO speaking," he said, his voice dripping with pride. But as the voice on the other end spoke, the smirk faded. His back stiffened, his jaw clenched, and his eyes widened ever so slightly. "What?" he snapped. The word came out sharper, colder. No, that's impossible. That can't be right." The entire room went silent. Every employee froze, watching his expression drain of color. He rubbed his temple, his voice lowering to a desperate whisper. I understand. Just give me time. I'll handle it." When he hung up, the man who had strutted into my office minutes ago looked nothing like the one sitting in my chair now. His hands trembled against the phone, his shoulders slumped, and for the first time, I saw fear etched into his face. Slowly, his eyes rose to meet mine. And then, in a voice cracked with desperation, he said the words no one expected. I need your help." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. My team stared at him, then at me, as if trying to confirm whether they'd heard correctly. This man, who had strutted in like a conqueror, was now trembling, admitting weakness, and turning to me, the very person he had tried to erase. I took a slow step toward him, letting the silence stretch. The click of my shoes on the floor echoed through the room, each step heavier than the last. His eyes followed me nervously, his hands still gripping the phone as though it might shield him. "You need my help?" I repeated, my tone calm, but cutting. "Funny. Not too long ago, you told everyone this company was yours." A ripple of uneasy laughter moved through the staff. He flinched, his face reddening. "You don't understand," he said quickly, his voice trembling. "That was the board. They've found discrepancies. Numbers that don't add up. They think I manipulated the books." My chest tightened, though I didn't let it show. "And did you?" I asked flatly. "No," he snapped, then lowered his tone almost instantly, as if realizing he no longer had authority to raise his voice. "No, I swear I didn't. Someone's setting me up. If I go down for this, it'll take the whole company with me. That's why I need you." I leaned closer, resting both hands on the desk, forcing him to meet my eyes. "You dismissed me. You humiliated my team. And now you want me to save you?" He swallowed hard, the sweat on his forehead glistening under the office lights. Around us, my team watched in silence, no longer confused about who the real leader was. The tables had turned. He wasn't in control anymore. I was. He lowered his eyes, his voice dropping to a whisper, meant only for me. "The board thinks I've been skimming funds, that I altered contracts for personal gain. But I swear, Ethan, I didn't touch the numbers. Someone else is behind this." I studied him carefully. His arrogance was gone. What remained was desperation. And desperation had a way of exposing truth. "Why should I believe you?" I asked coldly. "You walked in here, claimed my father's legacy as your own, and treated me like I was invisible." He exhaled shakily. "Because you know this company better than anyone. You grew up in these halls. Your father trusted you with everything. If anyone can spot what's wrong, it's you." Behind us, Clara and James exchanged looks. The tension in the office was palpable, every employee silently waiting for my response. I straightened, letting the silence hang. Finally, I said, "Fine. I'll look. Not for you, but for this company. If I find proof you're guilty, I'll be the first to bury you. But if someone else is pulling the strings, I'll drag them into the light." His shoulders sagged with relief, but fear still clouded his eyes. He knew the leash was in my hands now. That night, I spread the financial records across the conference table, page after page of contracts, invoices, and ledgers. Hours of digging revealed nothing, until Clara slid a folder toward me. "Ethan," she whispered, "look at this." The contract bore my father's signature, but the amendment attached was forged, redirecting payments to a shadow account. Hundreds of thousands siphoned away. And the signature at the bottom wasn't his. My blood ran cold. This wasn't incompetence. This was betrayal. I gripped the contract so tightly my knuckles turned white. The amendment was slick, carefully designed to slip past casual eyes. But the signature at the bottom, oh, I recognized it instantly. Victor Hale, a senior board member. My father's so-called right hand. A man who had stood beside him for decades, advising him, dining with our family, and even calling me the son he never had. My stomach churned with disgust. Clara's face was pale as she whispered, "Ethan, this isn't just fraud. This is sabotage. He's been bleeding the company for years." James slammed a fist against the table. "And now he's framing the new CEO to cover his tracks. Everyone's looking at the wrong man." The pieces clicked into place like a cruel puzzle. Victor had known the new CEO's arrogance would make him an easy scapegoat. All he had to do was plan enough evidence and let the fool's pride do the rest. I sat back, inhaling slowly, forcing my rage into focus. He thought he could hide this forever. He thought I wouldn't look. My voice was calm, but inside, a storm raged. The new CEO lingered at the doorway, his eyes wide as he realized the truth. "So, you believe me now?" he asked hesitantly. I turned to him, my expression sharp. "Don't mistake this for loyalty. You are still a fool who disrespected my father's name. But you were right about one thing. You're not the real enemy here." For the first time, he didn't argue. He just nodded, his pride stripped bare. I closed the file with deliberate slowness. Tomorrow, the board meets again. And when they do, Victor Hale will learn what it feels like to be exposed in front of everyone. The first step of my revenge was set. The next morning, the boardroom was a battlefield waiting to ignite. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, but the air inside felt heavy, charged with suspicion. The board members sat in their polished chairs, faces stern, waiting for answers. At the head of the table, Victor Hale leaned back casually, his silver hair gleaming under the lights, his expression calm, as if nothing could touch him. The new CEO sat 2 seats away, shoulders hunched, sweat gathering at his temples. He looked less like a leader and more like a man awaiting execution. I entered quietly, carrying a thick folder under my arm. Every eye turned toward me. The chairman nodded. "Ethan, we asked you to review the records. What did you find?" Victor smirked faintly, confident in the trap he had set. I placed the folder on the table and opened it slowly. I found a trail of amendments and redirected payments. Hundreds of thousands siphoned into an untraceable account. I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. And here's the shocking part. It wasn't the CEO who signed them. The room erupted in murmurs. Victor raised an eyebrow, his voice smooth. "And who, pray tell, do you claim is responsible?" I slid the contract across the table. "You tell me, Victor. That's your signature." The murmurs turned into gasps. Eyes darted from the document to Victor. He leaned forward, scanning the page, his smirk faltering for the first time. "This is absurd. Forged, clearly forged." I leaned in, my voice cutting like glass. "Forged? Strange, considering this handwriting matches dozens of documents you've signed over the years. Should we call in the forensic analysts?" Victor's composure cracked. His jaw tightened, his hand trembling ever so slightly as he pushed the folder away. For years, he had hidden behind loyalty, but today, the mask was slipping, and I was going to rip it off completely. The boardroom went still, every eye locked on Victor. His once casual posture stiffened as the evidence lay in plain sight before him. For decades, he had played the role of the wise advisor, the steady hand guiding my father through challenges. But now, the mask was gone. "This is slander," Victor barked, his voice louder than necessary, trembling at the edges. Ethan's trying to protect his father's legacy by shifting blame away from this incompetent CEO. You're all being manipulated. But his words didn't carry the weight they once did. I could see it in the faces around the table. The board wasn't convinced. They weren't leaning toward him anymore. They were leaning away. The chairman adjusted his glasses, studying the contract carefully. Victor, these amendments carry your signature. The account numbers trace back to shell corporations tied to your name. Do you deny this? Victor's face drained of color. This is someone's framing me. Clara, who had been silent until now, stepped forward with a second folder. If that's true, then perhaps you can explain why multiple payments were routed through a consultancy firm owned by your nephew? Gasps filled the room. Victor's eyes darted toward her, his composure unraveling. That's a coincidence. I leaned forward, my tone cold and deliberate. Coincidence doesn't drain hundreds of thousands of dollars from a company. Coincidence doesn't forge amendments and hide them under your nose. Admit it, Victor. You thought my father's retirement was your chance to cash out before anyone noticed. But you didn't count on me finding the truth. The silence that followed was deafening. The board members exchanged looks, their verdict clear. The chairman's voice was firm. Victor Hale, effective immediately, you are suspended pending full investigation. Legal action will follow. Security will escort you out. Victor's mouth opened, but no words came. He looked around the table, desperate for an ally. No one moved. His empire of lies had collapsed in a single morning. And as security stepped in to lead him away, I sat back, steady and unshaken. The company wasn't his. It never had been. The heavy doors of the boardroom shut behind Victor with a thud that echoed like the end of an era. For a long moment, no one spoke. The tension that had gripped the room slowly began to ease, replaced by a quiet realization. Justice had been served. The new CEO sat frozen in his chair, his eyes wide with disbelief. Hours ago, he had strutted around like a king. Now, he looked like a man who had narrowly escaped execution. He turned to me, his lips parting as if to thank me, but the words never came. Pride still chained his tongue. The chairman cleared his throat, drawing the board's attention back. Ethan, he said, his voice steady but carrying weight, your work uncovered the truth. Without you, this company would have been bled dry by one of its own. A murmur of agreement circled the table. For the first time since my father's retirement, the board looked at me not as the founder's son, but as a man capable of standing on his own. James leaned toward me, whispering just loud enough for others to hear. They see it now. You're the one who belongs here. I didn't smile. Not yet. I simply nodded, steady and composed. This wasn't about victory, it was about restoring what my father had built. The chairman's gaze lingered on me. The board will convene to decide the company's future leadership. Until then, we ask that you oversee operations. The employees trust you. We do, too. The new CEO flinched at the words, his jaw tightening, but he didn't object. He couldn't. His authority was already gone. I stood slowly, gathering the files in front of me. I'll do it, I said firmly. Not for titles. Not for recognition. But for the company my father gave his life to build. His legacy deserves nothing less. The board members nodded in unison. For the first time, the weight that had pressed on my chest since my father's retirement began to lift. The battle wasn't over, but the war was mine to win. The following week was unlike any I had ever lived through. The office, once filled with unease and whispers, now buzzed with renewed purpose. People moved with a confidence I hadn't seen since my father's last day, because they knew who was guiding them. Not a man chasing power, but someone carrying a legacy. The board had made their decision swiftly. The arrogant CEO was officially removed, his contract terminated. He left the building quietly, without the fanfare he had craved when he first walked in. I watched him go from my office window, a reminder that pride without substance always crumbles. Victor Hale, meanwhile, faced more than just suspension. The investigation confirmed everything I'd uncovered. Legal proceedings were already underway, and his name, once spoken with respect, was now whispered with contempt. My father's brother-in-arms had revealed himself as nothing more than a thief. As for me, the board voted unanimously to appoint me as the new CEO. The title didn't feel like a crown, it felt like a responsibility. I thought of my father that night, his quiet nod on his retirement day. He hadn't needed to say the words. He had trusted me to protect what he built, and now I finally understood the weight of that trust. When I walked into the office on my first official day, my team was waiting. Clara, James, and the others stood tall, their eyes filled with something I would never forget: pride. I took my place at the head of the table, not to declare ownership, not to boast, but to lead. This company, I told them, was never built on arrogance or greed. It was built on loyalty, hard work, and trust. That's how it will continue under my watch. The applause that followed wasn't for me alone. It was for my father, for his legacy, and for the new beginning we were about to write together. Weeks turned into months, and the company began to heal. The wounds left behind by arrogance and betrayal didn't vanish overnight, but step by step, we rebuilt trust. Employees who once walked the halls in silence now greeted each other with pride. Projects that had been stalled came back to life. The numbers stabilized, and slowly, so did the people. Sometimes, late at night, I found myself standing in my father's old office, the one he had vacated with dignity, not greed. His photo still hung on the wall, his eyes carrying the same steady calm they always had. I would look at it and wonder if he knew this storm was coming, if he trusted that I'd have the strength to weather it. I had started this journey feeling like a shadow of his legacy. I thought I'd spend years proving myself to the world. But in the end, it wasn't about proving anything. It was about protecting what mattered, the values my father had lived by. Victor Hale's trial made headlines, and the so-called new CEO was nothing more than a footnote in the company's history. Their greed and arrogance faded into irrelevance, but my father's name, our family's name, remained strong, unbroken. One evening, as I walked through the office, Clara stopped me with a small smile. "Your father would be proud," she said softly. I nodded, my throat tightening. "I hope so." And as I looked out over the city lights beyond the office windows, I felt something I hadn't in a long time: peace. The company was no longer just my father's legacy. It was mine too, and I vowed, silently but fiercely, that no one would ever steal it again.